Subsales versus new project, especially in current year 2019, I would say it always depends on the buyer. What is your purpose of buying this property? Is it for own stay or is it for investment? Okay. Once you know what is your purpose, if you know it's for own stay, definitely if you need to stay right now, you cannot be buying a project, because project usually it takes about minimum 3 years before it's completed, right? But if you are saying that, no, I'm buying for investment, then it depends on what is the current cash that you have allocated for this investment. If you are saying that actually I do not have any cash at all, but I know that currently is one of the best time to get into property market because now is the buyer's market. Then of course, getting into project, nowadays you know there is zero down, you don't need a lot of cash. In fact, there are many projects out there, they even give you cash back. So if you fall into this category where you have zero cash or zero down payment, but you want to enter into the market now because it's a good opportunity to enter in, then I would say you should go for project versus subsale. Because subsale usually you have to pay your own legal fees and you have to come down with at least minimum 10% down payment of the purchase price that you're buying. If you are an investor, depends on how much you would like to allocate for your investment. Just like myself, I am also an investor. Depends on currently what is your loan margin that the bank is able to give it to you. If let's say the bank is still able to give me 90% loan margin, and I see that there is this subsale where it's way below market value and there is a huge demand for rental, then definitely I would go for subsale. But if at the same time, if I see that, especially now, there is an awareness and also demand for short-term rental, and many developers also start to launch Airbnb ready properties. And if I think that I would like to position my property portfolio into including short-term rental, then definitely I would go into project, because that is part of the portfolio that I would like to add into my existing property investment. Okay, if you are already an investor, many of those investors, be it newbie or seasoned, more towards newbie lah, they always ask, when should I buy and when should I decide that I should keep it, or when should I decide that it's time for me to sell it off. So it very much depends on which market are you in now. If you come to our workshop, usually we would actually teach our students how to read the market, and you would know that currently the market is under seller's market or a buyer's market. As an investor or as a seller, it's always good for you to sell when you are under seller's market. But if you are currently under buyer's market, which is now we are in buyer's market, of course it's not a good time for you to sell, but it's a good time for you to go and grab all those good deals in the market. One of the very easy, okay, in order for you to know whether currently is it a buyer's market or a seller's market, one of the easiest symptoms for you to know is that during seller's market, the sellers are very tiao keng. They can ask for very high price, and there are still a lot of buyers queuing up to view the property and giving offers. And you can also tell from those developers, whenever they announce any new launching, you will see even overnight there are people queuing outside their sales office. When you see that are all symptoms telling you that currently that is a seller's market. Seller's market. A lot of buyers want to buy what the sellers is offering. But if, like currently, you should have heard a lot of media saying there is an oversupply in the market. You know, many developers, when they launch or even upon completion, they still unable to sell it off. And many buyers, whenever you talk about property, they will say, "Oh, better don't buy." You know, the sentiment is very negative towards property investment. Then definitely it's a buyer's market. So if you are a prudent investor, you would always want to go and grab good deals when the herd is not going into buying. Just like what Warren Buffett always says, when everyone is being greedy, you should be fearful, and vice versa, when everyone is fearful, you should be greedy. But of course, disclaimer is that you must arm yourself with the right skills and knowledge. I have actually received these questions from investors before. Should I actually invest in affordable housing? Because affordable housing come into Penang only recent 2 to 3 years ago, and it's actually part of our state government campaign to make sure that every one of us can have our own home. So affordable housing, usually the pricing are actually about 20% or below the market rate. So if you are asking me as an investor, should I go in and buy? Firstly, depends on the location. That's why I said when it comes to buying property, location is number one mantra. Even though it may sound a bit cliche, but it still holds very true. If let's say the location, the surrounding of the location, most of the properties are priced like probably 1 million and above, and this particular affordable housing is priced below 500K. Yeah, you should go in and grab it, because you know that eventually when you want to sell affordable housing, you can sell it off 5 years later, right? And you can sell it off to all those who falls under the affordable housing income criteria, which is I would think the income criteria is quite high lah. Like I think joint combined income should be about 10 or 15K. So the potential of the capital appreciation is still there. So still depends on where is the location for the affordable housing that you are buying, and how much below market value this affordable housing is being priced. Like for myself, if I am an investor, I would rather not touch affordable housing, because the potential of capital appreciation is not that high, and sometimes you might also face with some constraint when you try to rent it for short term. Yeah, I'm sure many of you have heard about number one criteria before you buy a property is always location. But some, they may be wondering, what do you mean by location? So when we say location, that means the location, firstly, it must be highly accessible. Means nearby there is public transport, where you can access this location via public transport and also your private transport. And at the same location, there are more than one or two routes for you to connect to other places. Then of course, secondly, it must be surrounded with many amenities. The basic amenities that we usually need is definitely school, hospital, banks, and of course, if you can have a shopping mall within a radius of 5 kilometers, it's even better. Thirdly, I would say most important thing to consider if you are buying for own stay, definitely it has got to be not too far from the place where you are working, preferably within 10 kilometers, so that you don't have to suffer the constraint of having to go to work, travel to and fro for too far if you were to buy it for own stay. Yeah, actually one of the questions that the investors, they always ask me, I know that this particular location is very good, it's surrounded with a lot of amenities, highly accessible, but the price is just way too high. So one of the tips I always give it to them is that if you think that that particular neighborhood the price is way too high, try to look for the surrounding neighborhood, the closest next neighborhood which is closest to this. Just like currently everyone is talking about Batu Kawan. We know that Batu Kawan is actually a major township, a brainchild of our state government. So all the property launches that they are currently launching, the price is already priced in the future. So many would like to buy, but they think that it is a bit too pricey. So what do? So you go and look for the surrounding neighborhood, which will actually get to, they call it what, the spillover effect. They will get to benefit from the development in that township itself.